Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining this webinar. My name is Austin Black and I'm a solutions engineer here at DigitalOcean. This webinar is pre-recorded due to some operations taking longer to run, such as downloading the sample data. We'll fast forward through that. But I'm also present in this webinar and I'll be answering your questions live afterwards. I'll also try to answer questions in the chat as they come up. This talk is geared more towards intermediate level technologists, but there are some tips and tricks in here that can benefit experts as well, and I'll do my best to be thorough in explaining everything I'm doing and why I'm doing it. To make sure expectations are set properly, this is not the most optimal way to set up and run Magento, but this is the fastest way to have a highly available and scalable infrastructure for Magento, which can be optimized later. So with all that said, let's get started. I need to make a project first. I'm just going to call this webinar, call it Magento webinar, and I need to select a purpose for it. I'm going to say just trying out DigitalOcean, even though that's really not true. I work here, but yeah. These don't really have any impact on what you can do in the cloud panel. It just adjusts some of the default suggestions and whatnot, but zero impact on functionality. I'm going to skip moving resources in for now because we're starting out mostly clean. More on that in a second. And yeah, let's get started with the droplet. So I'm going to go to Marketplace. I'm going to search Magento. We have two in here. The first one is an outdated listing that we need to get removed. Hopefully that'll be cleaned up soon. We have four different droplet plans here. We've got standard, general purpose, CPU optimized, and memory optimized. These three all have dedicated threads on them, but I don't need that, and they are significantly more expensive, so I'm going to stick to standard. We also do have smaller droplet plans over here, but their disk is too small to work with the image for the most part, and then this one is a bit too lean for what I'm trying to do, I think, so I'm going to stick with the default. I'm going to use our shiny new San Francisco 3 data center. I'm going to add it to my VPC over there, and I'm going to add my public key. For additional options, I don't need IPv6 or user data, but I do need monitoring, or I'd like monitoring at least, so I'm going to add that. And I'm going to set the hostname to Magento webinar base. I'm going to tag it as webinar. And tags are great in DigitalOcean. They are just excellent for working with database as a service, load balancers, for example. In database as a service, if you want to set a trusted source, you can just set a tag, and everything with that tag will automatically be added to trusted sources. I'm not going to enable backups now, but if you follow my work and if you want to reproduce this, I would highly recommend that you enable backups. But no IT person, developer, whoever, no competent one will ever fight you on whether or not backups are a good thing. Everyone needs backups, especially in prod. And so now this is going to provision, and I'm just going to talk about the next thing I'm going to do here for a bit. So I'm leveraging Cloudflare for their CDN and for their caching here. You can set a CNAME and an A record setup for webinar.digitalocean.solutions, and this is a floating IP in DigitalOcean. And what a floating IP is that it's a public IP address that you can just reassign to droplets on the fly. It's great for high availability, blue-green deployments, etc., etc. And so in this case, I'm using it with this so that I don't have to wait for DNS propagation while I'm setting up SSL. And so this is almost done, and once it's finished, we will give it that floating IP address. We're going to go to networking, go to floating IPs, wait for it to load up, and we're going to assign this IP to that droplet, which is Magento webinar base. I'm just going to copy this, wait for the label to update to make sure it applied properly. There we go. And now I'm going to use MOBA Xterm to SSH in. And if you're a Windows user who either has to or gets to work with Linux a lot based on your perception of Linux, MOBA Xterm is just a great tool to work with. It has X forwarding, supports tabs, it has access to your local drives if you need to SCP stuff. All in all, it's just a fantastic tool, and I can't recommend it enough. So I'm going to SSH over, and so it's going to ask for my domain or subdomain name. So I'm going to put in webinar.digitalocean.solutions. Then I'm going to add my email address here. Please don't spam me. My username will be ablack. This is just for Magento. Same with this password, so I'm just going to throw in a temporary password there. Yes, we'd like Let's Encrypt to set up SSL for us because you're not enterprise ready without SSL. You're barely functional without SSL these days on the web. So email address will be ablack@digitalocean.com. I agree to the terms of service. The EFF already has my email address, and I would like it for both of these. All right, looks like everything went a-okay here. We want to make sure that everything goes to HTTPS, so we will set up the redirect here as well. And now it's going to ask for my information for Magento's marketplace. You do need an account on Magento's marketplace in order to do this. It's free. And so when it asks for your username here, it's actually asking for your public access key. And then your password is your private access key. And so I'm just going to paste those in here. You won't see the password, but it is there, obviously. Let me go through. We'll store the credentials, and then we're going to fast forward through this bit here because this is going to take probably 12 to 15 minutes of real time, and I wish I could fast forward right now. So all right, that took a decent amount of time. Usually it's actually faster than that. That's honestly the longest I've seen Magento deployments take, but that's why we have this pre-recorded, why we're fast forwarding. So now I'm going to install the sample data because we need that to highlight what we're trying to do here. And I'm going to need to re-authenticate to the Magento marketplace. This time it's going to save these credentials in a different location. There we go, make my life easier again. And now we're going to fast forward again because this takes a while too. Okay, our Magento site is up and running now. Let's go check it out. So I'm going to go to webinar.digitalocean.solutions and hopefully be greeted by a lovely Magento page. And there it is. And I can see that I've got SSL and that everything is looking pretty good there. So I'm going to go to admin. I'm going to sign in with that and the temporary password I sent before. All right, and now we're going to use a very important feature in Magento here. So if we go to stores and then we go to configuration and we go to advanced, and if it always expands general for some reason. If we go to advanced and then go to system, we can change the storage configuration for our media. So by default, it goes to file system, which is okay. It's good if you're running like a monolithic deployment or just yeah, if you have just one node running, or if you can set up like a shared file server or something, then the file system is great. But we're trying to go fast here. We don't have time to set up a DFS or NFS shares or anything like that. So we're going to actually leverage the database in order to be our media store, which does have some performance hits. It does take longer to retrieve the information, but because we're leveraging Cloudflare, like I said, more on that later, we can mitigate a large part of that performance hit. And so we'll just wait for this to synchronize. It usually doesn't take very long. There we go, it's done. We'll hit save config. We'll go back to our cache management. So go here. I see that two of these are invalidated. I'm going to go and refresh them. So there we go. Okay, so those two caches are refreshed. So now we're running all of our media storage through our database, in fact. And so I think we're done in the web portal at this point. We're going to go back to our cloud panel actually, and we're going to set up a database. So we're going to go create databases. We want MySQL 8. Need a beefier database, so let's go with 8 gig for CPU because we're also running media off of this. Let's get a standby node. What this effectively means is that if that maintenance occurs or an unexpected outage or something happens to your primary database node, it'll fail over automatically to this one. We're going to go to SFO3, which is where our web server node is currently, and we're going to go DB webinar, and we're adding it there. I actually don't need to tag this, so we'll just leave blank, but we might as well. Why not? So, yeah. And private networking is on, so this will be able to talk over the private interface rather than the public interface to our web server Droplet. And here we go. So let's create a database cluster. We'll wait for it to get provisioned. We'll hit get started. We're going to restrict it to the webinar tag. And then here's our connection details. I'm going to actually do this later because we need to make a change here. There's all that. We hit great, I'm done. While this is provisioning, we can go over to users and databases. We have to wait for this to finish, but Magento doesn't work with MySQL 8 authentication. We need to kick it over to the legacy authentication as it says here. And so over in here, we're going to go to cdvar www html, and I can see all my Magento files here. There we go. Don't need the G flag. Okay. And so from here, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go use Nano because it's fast and easy again. Please don't judge me. I know that Vim or Emacs is generally preferred, but Nano's fast, and we're going for fast today, so yeah. Get a Nano app, etc, env.php. We're going to scrape out all this information. I'm going to just put this on a text file on the side. I don't actually mind that you guys are seeing this because it's going to change anyway, and I'll secure it after this webinar as well. So we have these now, and so the next step is we need to dump this database. And what that's going to look like is this line here. And so it's this. So we have MySQL dump, dumping with our Magento user. We're going to ask for the password. We're going to set GTID off, and we are going to dump the database. And the password going back to that text file. Paste it. All right, now I should see a lovely magento.sql file here. There it is. I'm going to edit it again. And so DigitalOcean recently introduced a restriction that tables that don't have primary keys cannot be added to our MySQL database as a service. There is a workaround for this, though, that I'm going to demonstrate now. I hope the database team doesn't come after me for this too badly. And so what that is that in here, we can set a local session variable that overrides the global lock, and we no longer require primary keys. So that's in here now. And so then there's also a few other issues in here. Actually, I'm going to reopen Nano just to show this to you guys. And so if we go over to about line 1300 or so, we're going to start seeing these view creates here. These are obviously not going to work with the new setup. I'm going to keep, I'm actually going to change all of this, and this happens like 60 times or so in this SQL file. We're going to reuse our DO-admin user that was created, and we're going to adjust localhost to be a % sign because we're no longer working with localhost. Percent in MySQL is a wildcard, but it does not actually pattern match localhost, so that does need to be adjusted. And so I've got a couple, I'm going to write a couple seds here real quick. And so what this is going to do is it's going to find every instance of Magento on a definer line, but only on the definer lines because obviously replacing everything in the SQL file that says Magento with DO-admin is a very bad idea. And we're going to dump that to a new magento1.sql file. In addition, we're going to make that change that I just mentioned, where we update the localhost to be a %, and that's what this looks like here. And now I'm just going to manually inspect the file just to make sure that that all went through properly. Then we're going to go to line 1300 again. Do a manual inspect. So that didn't work actually, so let's see what happened there. Oh, the problem is I opened up magento.sql. It happens. So we're going to edit. We're going to open up magento2.sql now. Sorry, it's been a long day. Nano magento2.sql. And we'll go to line 1300 again. And now we can see that the definer is set to DO-admin at % properly. And that'll be replicated throughout the database in each point. And so now that our database should be done provisioning in theory, yep, there it is. We are going to kick over its password encryption over to legacy. And we're going to add a new database that we call Magento, because Magento needs its database to be called Magento. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to grab this password. We're going to go back to that file that we made before. Or not made, rather, the file that we opened before, the environment file. And we're going to update all of this. So we're still going to use our doadmin user here because that's fine to use. DB name should be Magento. Paste in the new password and update the host to be the new location, which I will grab from back over here. We go back to that. We want to use the private network so that we're not sending all this over the public interface, which will also ding your bandwidth costs as well as being less efficient in general. So now we go back here. And then we need to put the port in, which is 25060. And then this all looks good to me. So let's see how this dump go, or how this import goes. And so I'm going to do the import like so. And then just fix that one flag there. Oh, not Magento clean. Whoops, that was from my old testing. We want Magento 2. Then I need my password again, so let's go back over here. Let's show the password. Let's grab it. Okay, so it's saying I've got the wrong password now, so let's see why that might be. I'm using a password. It's using doadmin. Let's go back to the users real quick. It was showing the old password. Sometimes the UI takes a while to update across the board. So that's a gotcha that you have to be aware of, and just make sure that you stay in the user screen because sometimes it takes a bit for the overview screen to update as well. So let's try that again. So we do that, paste the password in, and it fails again. Copied again. I know that. All right, I'm going to cut this here while I figure out what's going on and get this solved real quick. All right, so I had a bit of a pepcac there, to be honest. I'm going to leave that in anyways, just because it's important to show that we're all human and everyone makes mistakes. I forgot to update the actual host name to be the correct one. I will just add that. And then I'm going to go here, grab the password again from the correct place, copy it, paste it, and now my dump is working. Or my import is working, rather. And so this will take a bit. We'll fast forward through this again, too. Actually, while this is happening, what we can do is also set up a load balancer. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to networking. We're going to go to load balancers. We're going to hit create load balancer. We obviously need an SFO3 because that's where our droplets in our database is. And I'm just going to apply the webinar tag to it. And so we have that, but since we're using SSL, we need an HTTPS rule, even though we're doing the redirect on the server itself. We still need that rule, or else the traffic will be dropped at the load balancer, and we're just going to do pass-through. We will terminate SSL at the web server itself. And as far as these advanced settings go, I don't want to change any of these, but I'll explain what they do really quickly. Round robin just means that if there are multiple nodes available, it'll just treat them as a queue and just cycle through them. These connections will identify the droplet with the least amount of open connections available. Sticky session sets a cookie to ensure that you always end up on the same node. SSL, we actually do want to turn that one on too. Why not? And we don't need the proxy protocol for this either right now. And there's more information on that in our documentation for when you would want to turn that on. And then we go webinar load balancer. Create the load balancer there. Then we wait for it to get an IP address. And let's check on how. Okay, so our import is done. And so our site should be up and running still. And yeah, it's still there. If we go webinar. Side note, I did a bad thing here. Do not do this. If you're doing this with the live site, make sure that you enable maintenance mode before you do all that, because this is a fresh install. I don't actually care that much. If I lose it, I just restart over again. But if you're doing this with the live site, always, always, always make sure that you use maintenance mode. If there's any chance that you're going to lose data, if there's any actual work you've put into it, always enable maintenance mode. So yeah, but our site is still working, and this is with the database being the media store. I can go here. I can check out the different things. So it'll take a bit longer to load the media because We're loading up the media from the database, so it has a few more hops to go. But because we're using Cloudflare for our DNS, that's going to be cached at the edge, and that'll accelerate future requests for people in similar regions to me geographically. And so let's see now. So we've got our load balancer spun up. We've verified that our site is still working. It's time to shut this down and take an image of it. So I'll do shutdown-h now. So it's going to be shut down. We'll give it a minute or two to actually get shut down properly. And I'm just going to take a look at the speed, or the speed here. So you can see that just by routing my DNS through Cloudflare, I'm getting significantly faster speed, and also I have some caching available as well on the edge. There is a Magento extension or a Cloudflare extension for Magento, but mostly it actually just lets you manage your Cloudflare features through Magento, and it works for premium Cloudflare features that I'm not currently employing. This is just the Cloudflare free plan, and I'm still benefiting from it. And so our droplet should be offline now. We go to droplets. We go to actually click into it. We can see that it's off properly, which is what we want. We want to take a snapshot of this. That name is fine to me. So I'll take that snapshot. This is going to take a few minutes. It usually takes, well, this one I don't want to say how long it's going to take because it really varies on disk size. But droplet snapshot time does scale with disk size. And so we'll fast forward through this again until the snapshot is complete. Okay, so we've made our image now. So we're going to make a droplet from that image. So we'll go back to our webinar project. You can see that that's there. And so we want to go with create droplet. And we go from snapshots. And we want this most recent base one. And we want to keep the same specs. We want to make sure it's on the VPC though. Add my SSH key again. And we'll call it Magento Webinar 1 because it's not the base, it's the actual node. We'll go typing is hard. So I'll add the webinar tag to it, and we'll hit create droplet. And now our load balancer looks sad. Let's see why the load balancer looks sad. So, yep, it's sad because it's off, which is expected, honestly. And as you saw back there, our other droplet was already added to it because of the tag. So we can go ahead and turn this back on now while that other droplet is provisioning. And let's go back to networking actually. Let's go to load balancers again. Let's grab this thing's IP address. Let's go back to Cloudflare, go back to DNS, and let's update this to be the load balancer because we don't need to worry about SSL setups anymore. So go back to the cloud, go back to our droplet. Actually, let's go to webinar so it's all in one place. We'll just wait for these to provision. I can leave the floating IP on there, I can remove it. It really doesn't matter because it's behind the load balancer now anyway. And so these are still turning on, so of course it's going to say it's unhealthy. All right, it should be up and running now. And so let's just SSH into both of these and just make sure that they're running. And we go there. And then we go open up a new tab. Like I said, MOBA Xterm has tabs, which is just lovely. And then we go. That's up and running. And we can just skip the subscript. It's going to try to fire again because it's made from that base image of the one-click image, but we don't actually need to worry about that. So we can go here, and let's just go back to webinar.digitalocean.solutions. And it's still up and running, and everything looks fine. So let's go to fitness equipment. Why not? All right, and so you can see it's taking longer to show that the cache hasn't been populated yet on Cloudflare, but that also shows that it's still working and it's working live right now. And so let's just see if the webinar, or sorry, if the load balancer is actually reporting healthy yet. Yep, there we go. So now it's reporting healthy, everything is good. And that's basically my presentation. So at this point now, your Magento store has the highly available infrastructure it needs to scale. You can add more web server nodes. You can turn up your database cluster. At this point, you can add a payment processor such as Stripe or Square. You can leverage further features. You can start working on SEO. But that's everything that you should need infrastructure-wise to get going with a highly scalable e-commerce site on DigitalOcean. And at this point, I'm going to stop the recording and just start answering questions live. Thanks for watching. All right, thank you, other Austin. I actually lied a little bit there. We're not going to get into the questions just yet, but first we're going to look at some diagrams about where we started, what we have now, and where we're going to go from here. So when we first installed that one-click image, this is basically what we had. We had one box that had the web server, the media store, and the database all running on the same infrastructure. Obviously, if something happens to that, if it goes down, we lose our whole store. That's not optimal, and that's not resilient in any way, and therefore isn't enterprise grade. So what we did during that video is that we broke this out and made it look more like this. So now going from the internet, we go to Cloudflare, then we go to our load balancer. We have two web servers in case one of them fails or needs maintenance. Those both hook into the database and media store, which also has a standby node just in case something happens to that database store. And so DigitalOcean load balancers are also inherently highly available. When you buy a load balancer from us, you actually get two droplets that are running load balancing software. And if something happens to the first one, the second one fails over without any user intervention required. So this is now a highly available setup. So you can look at this and you can say, okay, this is great for getting started, but this isn't ready for truly enterprise ready business. What if I get 1 million visitors a day? What if my database performance isn't good enough for what I need? There could be lots of different questions you have for where we can go from here. And so, for example, you say, Austin, I'm not happy with my database's read performance. And I say, no problem, we have read-only nodes. And so you can add read-only nodes to your database cluster, and that'll scale its read capabilities horizontally. And what that basically means is that in addition to your primary master node, you have additional database servers that have a copy of the data, but they can only be read from. They don't write any changes to the actual master database. And so then you say, okay, Austin, that's great, but I'm still not happy with my database performance. I think that putting the media store on here was a bad idea. I need to change that. And I say, no problem. Here's what you can do. Magento will let you flip it back to a file system. What you would do then is set up the DFS or NFS, as I mentioned earlier. And then you would you would mount both of those to the web server's media directory, and then it would work off of that. And now your database is under much lighter load, and you should be seeing much greater performance from your setup. And then you say, we hit the end game and you say, okay, Austin, that's all great and everything, but at this point I'm getting 1 million visitors. My infrastructure just can't keep up. What can I do from here? And the great news is because of how this is architected now, we can actually scale each of these individual components as we need. And so we could end up with something that looks maybe like this, where we've replaced a DigitalOcean load balancer with a higher capacity HA proxy pool that can handle many more connections than a DigitalOcean load balancer can. We can add more web server nodes. We can scale up our network media storage as we need. We can scale our database as we need, add more read-only nodes, et cetera, et cetera. And so from there, we can take care of every individual piece as it needs attention. And so a note on SSL, there was an error in the video. I had all my records set to DNS only when I needed to proxy traffic through Cloudflare in order to fully take advantage of it. I'd like to apologize for that and just rectify that now. This is what it should have looked like. And also here's what my SSL encryption mode looks like on Cloudflare. As you can see, I'm using a self-signed certificate on the server, which works well with Let's Encrypt. And then so for final thoughts, so yeah, our base infrastructure is scalable and highly available. We can adjust each piece as we need. We can make changes to each atomic component without worrying about breaking every other one. They are tightly cohesive but loosely coupled, which means that they work well together, but they can also be adjusted as need be without worrying about breaking other pieces. Since it's backed by DigitalOcean Database as a Service, it's inherently highly available and read scalable because we handle the standby node for you, we handle adding read-only nodes, et cetera, et cetera. as you need. And the file store can be changed and tuned. As you saw, you can use a database or you can use a media server. Really, the best solution for you depends on what your needs are, how much your media is changing, how often your store updates, and what technical expertise you have available to you. And so one major gotcha that I want to just highlight with this, if you try to reproduce this work at home, if you're following along, when you install Magento, it does download code and install it. It compiles it, reflects it, everything. And there can be version mismatches with that. Our one-click image at the time of taking this video was 2.3.4, but the actual released version of Magento is 2.3.5. I got lucky-ish, and I didn't actually hit any issues with that, but that could happen down the road if you try to reproduce this work. And so now that we're at this point, now you just have to look at what other considerations you have to worry about for your store, what you want to use for a payment processor, what custom extensions you need in order to grow your business. Do you want to add caching layers anywhere, Varnish, Redis, etc.? I didn't include those on because I felt that was going a bit past the scope of what I wanted to cover here, but those are also all important things to consider for your e-commerce site. And with that, I think it's time for some questions. Let me take a look here. All right, let's go to the questions list. Okay, so which language has been used to develop the site? So first off, Magento is implemented in PHP, and you can write your own custom extensions for it. Magento is very developer forward, it's very developer friendly, and if you are competent at PHP, or if you have the money to hire someone who is, you can basically do whatever you need with it with a custom extension. All right, where a DO load balancer is deployed, using the example where you have two drops behind it, are e-commerce transactions replicated across the droplets in real time or on a schedule or something else? So on that one, actually depends on how you handle your payment processor, etc. Each transaction should be atomic to each web node. They won't be replicated. A transaction must complete. You can't partially have a transaction. This would be a case where also you'd want to turn on sticky sessions just to ensure that everyone is running on the same web node, although they shouldn't lose any data by traversing nodes regardless. Follow-up, if a droplet goes down, does the process to resync the transactions automatic or manual? So you don't actually need to resync the transactions on the flip side because of how this is constructed. Everything goes to the same database setup regardless of which web node you're on, and they're using the same media store and everything. So there isn't any actual syncing that needs to be done. This is why we can just add more web server nodes on the fly as we need, because they all hook into the same backend. All right. Why did I pick Magento over WordPress, and why is it better for e-commerce? That one's tricky. I personally would not say that it's better or not. WooCommerce is actually a plugin that gets used for WordPress to transform it into an e-commerce site. But so that's more targeted to people who are familiar with WordPress already or running a smaller site, so on and so forth. Magento is designed for medium to large businesses. It's backed by Adobe, and it's very, very highly scalable and extensible. And so Magento is a better fit for medium to larger businesses, and WooCommerce is better for smaller shops, or if you have existing WordPress expertise or an existing WordPress site you're trying to hook into. For PrestaShop, hi, is this possible to do this with PrestaShop? I actually don't know. I'm not that familiar with PrestaShop. I would have to investigate it and get back to you on that one. On my SQL file, the command for primary key off, we can either add that as a comment later, or you can go back and check the video again. It's just, you set the local session variable to disable the requirement for primary keys. Honestly, if you Google for basically that phrase, you will get the command required in order to do so. And is this a session for a highly available WordPress website? No, this is for Magento specifically, but a lot of the techniques and tricks used here would apply to WordPress as well. And so you would definitely, it wouldn't be a one-to-one transition. You need a little bit of work in order to convert the work over to make it work for WordPress, but it should still, you should still be able to apply all the techniques that you've learned here. Is there any customization required to use the read-only nodes for the database? No, there isn't. You literally just click add a read-only node, and then you pick the region you want to store it in, because you can have region-specific read-only nodes if you'd like, although that does introduce latency to the read-only node. But yeah, there's no other real configuration to it. It's actually really straightforward. It's very easy. All right, is Magento open source? Yes, Magento has two different versions. There's Magento Commerce and there's Magento Community Edition. This was done with Magento Community Edition and is open source. Magento Commerce does have some premium features as well as other managed hosting solutions available to it. Hosted database will update the DBMS. Will other droplets update automatically for security? No, they will not update automatically for security. After the one click has been deployed, you are responsible for maintenance and security. if this seems like too much work for you, or if this isn't attractive to you due to the overhead, there are managed Magento hosting providers out there, such as JetRails, that will just handle everything for you. It will be more expensive because you're paying for a managed service rather than doing it yourself, but you do get the peace of mind that goes with it. All right, and what is the approximate total cost for an e-commerce app with Magento every month if there are 500,000 active users every day? That's a good question. It really depends on how your Magento is configured, because you can have custom extensions in play. You can have a whole bunch of other things here. There's no really one size fits all answer, but with the spec sheets that I set up earlier today, aside from the load balancer, which I'm going to state a limit that we have here, DigitalOcean load balancers do cap out at 10,000 concurrent connections. So if you have more than 10,000 visitors at the same time, not necessarily per day, that load balancer will be your bottleneck. With that last setup that I showed there, with an HA proxy pool, more web servers, etc., 500,000 visitors should be no issue whatsoever. All right. I think that's all of the questions currently available. Is there a Magento 2 droplet available for us to get started? Yes, I actually should have included this in the video, and I'm sorry that I didn't. Well, no, I did include it at the start. So in our control panel, in our cloud panel, there's the marketplace tab there, or you can also just on the web go to marketplace.digitalocean.com and search for Magento, and the exact image I used to make this webinar will be available to you as well. Does the database media store have any advantage over the file media store? Yes, this is actually something I'd like to talk about for a little bit here. So the database store inherently actually is kind of a bad practice, because you're adding additional hops to get to your media, and it's going to basically increase your site's latency to load unless you have a CDN or similar caching mechanism like Cloudflare in play to help mitigate that. That being said, the main advantage here was that if I didn't do that, if I tried to run everything on a file system without using a distributed file system or a network file system of some kind, I would need to set up basically a way to sync my local media directories across both droplets, which is prone to failure and just generally not a good practice either. So the main advantage with the database is that rather than having to worry about configuring my file system, ensuring everything stays in sync, so on and so forth, by storing all of my media in the database, that just means that now I no longer have to worry about that sync step anymore, or setting up a distributed file system or a network file system or anything like that. And so it's great for time savings, as we saw today. And honestly, if that mechanism wasn't available, I'm not sure I'd be able to set up this site in under an hour. Also, one other thing I just want to clarify on that point, I meant to clarify on this at the start of the webinar, this really did take under an hour. The total runtime for the video was actually 55 minutes, and I just fast forwarded through the boring downloading parts, etc. But yeah, this is literally doable in under an hour if everything goes your way with it. All right. Is it possible to get tech support? If so, how? That's kind of a nebulous question. Are you looking for tech support with Magento specifically, or with DigitalOcean, or? Yeah, I'm gonna need a bit more clarification on that question. Sorry about that. And the media could be set up with DigitalOcean Spaces. That is a yes-ish, sort of, kind of really no answer. So Magento doesn't support S3 style storage out of the box, but there are custom extensions that do that to let you hook it into DigitalOcean Spaces or AWS S3, so on and so forth. But they're third party, they're not officially supported, and they do tend to break every time an update comes out. And so it's really not recommended, at least personally, I wouldn't recommend trying to run your business off of a S3 style storage with Magento right now. All right, what is my cost estimation for this solution? Okay, so we ended up with two $40 a month droplets, a $10 a month load balancer, and an $80 a month database solution. And so, plus a standby note, so 120 there. So all in all, that's 90. That's about $210 for this. And that's with the free tier, that's with DBaaS, that's with everything. And so to run this setup, which would easily scale to 10,000 concurrent visitors as long as the load balancer kept up, especially because we're doing SSL pass-through, your bill would be about $210 a month US plus tax or so. That'd be the right ballpark. Okay, why not start out with HA proxy as it time takes to set up? That's exactly right. So why not start with HA proxy as it time takes to set up, etc., versus Dio's load balancer? Yes, that's exactly it. That's exactly right. Setting up the DigitalOcean load balancer was much easier and much faster than standing up HA proxy myself, configuring it for pooling, all that other fun stuff. With the load balancer, it was literally a few clicks and I was done. And for my first, I don't expect to go from 0 to 10,000 concurrent visitors in under a day. So that gives me more than enough time to get started, track my visitor counts. And when I start seeing, say, the 5,000 visitors, 5,000 concurrent visitors mark, that's the time that I'd start looking at HA proxy or so, maybe a bit earlier. Okay, is Magento especially oriented work with MySQL, or does it support Postgres as well? Magento is MySQL only. It does not support Postgres as far as I know, and it's recommend that you work with Magento. I think you can make it work with MariaDB because it's supposed to be compatible with MySQL, but Magento or MySQL is the recommended database technology to use with Magento. For DigitalOcean support, just go to our support page, file a ticket. Yeah, I'm not really sure what else to tell you there, to be honest. Yeah, if you just Google for DigitalOcean support, you should be able to find exactly what you need. All right. Is there? I think that's every question that I have on the docket right now. Any other questions? Anything about DigitalOcean? With the Let's Encrypt setup on each node, how are the certificate renewals handled? Great question. You'll get an email when we set up when we did that initial setup of Let's Encrypt, it'll send you an email from Let's Encrypt saying when your cert's about to expire, and it'll give you the next steps required in order to renew it and make sure that it doesn't expire on you. It's very straightforward. Let's Encrypt is extremely easy to use, and I am honestly a huge fan of their work. Where would you recommend to install Elasticsearch? Elasticsearch, I would recommend that you, if you're using DigitalOcean, use a droplet that has dedicated threads. Elasticsearch does require very precise timings. You can't afford hypervisor steal to affect you. As I said earlier in the presentation, the standard droplets do have hypervisor steal, but that's why they're so much lower cost. The other 3 droplet plans do have dedicated threads and therefore are much more suitable for Elasticsearch. Do I need to set up SSL for each droplet, or do I set it up for the load balancer? So in this case, we just set it up on each droplet and then set the load balancer to pass through. That's generally recommended because, well, you can terminate SSL at the load balancer. That does place a much heavier load on it and makes it more difficult for it to reach the 10,000 concurrent connections. And so, yes, you do. And that's what the one-click image did for you. It set up Let's Encrypt for you. And so then you just set up your Cloudflare to have full encryption, but that allows a self-signed certificate like Let's Encrypt. And then, yeah, you just allow your load balancer to pass it through. All right. Is there an automated version of the setup, i.e. Terraform? Not currently, but that's a good idea. I might try to build one myself. I just hadn't honestly considered that yet. I missed the first part of the webinar. Are you going to share this webinar's recording? If it was recorded? Yes, it was recorded. Yes, we'll be sharing it. It'll be on DigitalOcean's webinar series as well as our YouTube. And yeah, you should be able to just come back, replay it, try to implement it yourself, follow along, do whatever you'd like with it. Can I make a similar tutorial for WordPress in the future? We will take it under advisement. We're always looking for new ideas for webinars, and that's a good idea, so we will add it to the list. Is there any recommendations on security? Does the load balancer protect my solution somehow, like AWS CloudFront? No, we don't. The load balancer is just that. It's a layer 3 load balancer that has pass-through or SSL termination. What we do have, though, DigitalOcean offers cloud firewalls, and so you can configure those extremely easily in our cloud panel to allow what traffic you want to allow through, what protocols, what ports you want to open, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, DigitalOcean is always maintaining and improving their security posture at every level, and so we are very confident in our infrastructure security inherently. All right, I think that's all the questions we have for now. I'll keep an eye on the comments page, and yeah, feel free to reach out to DigitalOcean if you have any further questions or comments or requests for future topics or anything like that. I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you all have a great day.